Y-intercept form of the equation. And when you see an equation in the form of y equals mx plus b, this is probably the most useful form of the equation. When it's set up like this, whatever this number is the slope, and whatever this number is the y-intercept. So if you think about the lesson that we just did before, we know that the slope, the m number, tells us whether to go up or down, and then tells us whether to go left or right. And then if you go to the X and Y intercept lesson, the b number, let's do an example here. Y equals 3x plus 2. Now remember how to find the y-intercept. First of all, that's the slope, right? The slope is 3. So that's m. And this is the y-intercept. And let me explain that to you real quick. If you remember what the y-intercept is, the y-intercept is where x is equal to 0. Right? So if I put that into this equation, it's pretty obvious why 2 has to be the y-intercept, because if I put a 0 in for x, then what does y have to be? Well, it's 3 times 0 plus 2. So y is really obvious. That goes away. You're left with 2. So 0, 2. Now, that's the y-intercept, and that's the slope, right? You put those two pieces together, you have all the information you need. For example, if I told you, if I asked you where your friend's house, how to get to your friend's house, and I said, well, 2 blocks north and 3 blocks east, it really doesn't help you because you don't know where to start from. If I say 2 blocks north and 3 blocks east from my house, then I have a starting point and I have directions. Directions without a starting point is useless, and starting point without directions is useless. You need the two pieces together. And that's what these two things do. The y-intercept gives me a starting point, and the slope gives me directions. You put these two together, you can graph really quickly. All right, so let's try an example here. Y equals 2x plus 3. So the first thing I want you to do is tell me what the slope is and tell me what the y-intercept is. Well, if an equation is in this form, y equals something times x plus a number, so y equals mx plus b, the m number has to be 2, right? Then you have to tell me what that means in words. Well, 2 means 2 over 1, right? Go back to that lesson on slope if you're not sure. The top number means up or down, so positive 2 is up 2, positive 1 is right 1. Or, remember the lesson before, down 2, left 1. Okay, so I have directions now. I go up 2 and right 1, right? Now my y-intercept is, if the equation is in this form, whatever this number is my y-intercept. So my y-intercept here has to be this 3. So my y-intercept is 0, 3. Now, because I have those two pieces, I have enough information to graph this very quickly. This is by far my favorite way of graphing because it's so quick to do. And by the time you're done with this chapter, I think you'll be very good at this. So let's do that. Starting point and directions. Well, which one do I start with? Do I start with the starting point or directions? Well, obviously I need to start from someplace. Well, where am I going to start from? Well, here's a starting place, 0, 3. So I put a dot on 0, 3. Right? Then I follow the directions. It says go up to 1, 2 over 1. There's a dot on the line. Up 2 over 1. Dot on the line. Up 2 over 1. Dot on the line. What about these points down here where I could go down 2 over 1? Point on the line. Down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. Right? Blah, 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 all the way down to that graph. Now, as you can see, that was my starting point, and these are my this tells me how to move, and now by doing that, I have enough information to graph the equation. So I'm going to go ahead and graph it now. So my graph is going to look like that. And like that. So something very similar to that. I know my line's a little bit off, but you get the idea. There's the graph of my equation. Now that may take a few seconds for you to do, but think about this for a minute. So far, the only way you know how to graph is either make a table or use the X and Y intercepts. Now the X and Y intercepts are not that hard, but this is even quicker. And not only will it give you a starting point, but it'll help you visualize what's going on in the graph very quickly. All right? So let's do another example. Now remember, this only works when it's in this form, y equals mx plus b. So if you look at this second example, is this in y equals mx plus b form? No, it's not. I need to get the y by itself, I need to get the x number second, and the number by itself. All right, so let's do that. How do I get rid of the 2x? Well, subtract 2x from both sides, or add negative 2x to both sides, right? Y equals, now notice, do I want the number or do I want the x number first? I want the x number first. So which chunk should I write first, the negative 2 or the negative 2x? Well, the negative 2x, because I want the x first and then the number second. So that's what I'm going to do. This is going to be y equals negative 2x minus 2. Now these look the same. Now you may be saying, well, that's plus something, but that's minus. But if you look at that chunk, it's just going to be a negative 2, right? Because that could become plus a negative 2. So now what do? Well, I have to find my slope, and I have to find my y-intercept. I have to find my directions, and I have to find my starting point. Well, my directions is the slope, and my slope is negative 2, which means negative 2 over 1, which means, remember, negative numbers mean down 2, positive left or right, right 1. If you're not sure how to do that, go back to the lesson on slope. Or up 2, left 1. Okay? Next part, find the y-intercept. Whatever that number is the y-intercept. So it's 0, negative 2. What does this give me? This gives me directions. This gives me a starting point, and that's enough information to graph. So I go down to negative 2, put a dot there. Then I follow my directions. Down 2, right 1, dot there. Down 2, right 1, dot there. Down 2, right 1, dot there. Or up 2, left 1, dot there. Up 2, left 1, dot there. And I can keep going throughout the whole graph. I'm not going to do that, but you get the idea. I've got enough points to graph the line. So then I just graph the line. Yeah, it's a little bit off, but you understand. And there's the graph of my line. Looks like that. So let's do a couple more examples so you can really get this down. But by now I think you probably this is making sense to you as long as your algebra is pretty decent. All right, so what am I going to do here? Well, get the y by itself first, right? Well, that's not going to be hard. All I have to do is add a negative 3x to both sides, right? And I end up with y equals, now remember, I want the x number first, so negative 3x, it's a positive 7, so it's plus 7. All right, what's my slope? At this point, this would be a good time to pause and try to do this yourself and then watch the video right afterwards. So if you want to do that, go right ahead right now and then turn the video back on when you're done to see if you got the right answer. But the slope in this case is negative 3, which means negative 3 over 1, which means down 3, right 1. Yes? And the y-intercept, oh, let's do the other one too. Up 3 what? Left 1. Got it? There's my directions. Next part, y-intercept. My y-intercept is going to be positive 7, which is 0, 7. Starting point, directions, put them together, you can graph it. So go to 7 on the y-intercept, so it's right there. And you're going to go down 3, right 1. Now this time I'm going to actually show you something else you can do. You don't have to go down 3, right 1. You could actually do any ratio that means the same thing. So going down 3, right 1 is the same as going down 6, right 2. Because 6 over 2 is 3 over 1. Down 6, right 2. And what that lets me do is I can quicker sketch the graph. So I'm going to go down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right 2, 1, 2. See, it just spreads the dots out more so I can quickly graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right 2, dots on the graph. That's enough information to graph it. So something like that, and something like that, right? Looks something like that. So this, if you watch the video right now after doing it yourself, if you got the same thing, you totally understand this now. This should be easy for you. Okay, let's do another example. Got 3 more here. All right, let's go a little bit quicker now. All right, first step. First step is to get the y by itself. Now, I'm going to talk to you about this one for a few seconds. I like this problem because it really makes you do a few things smartly at the beginning. I could get rid of this 3x and bring it over here, and it'll become a negative 3x, right? I can do that, but then at the end I'm going to have to divide by a negative 3, which means I'm going to have to divide by a negative, both things. It's not that hard, but it's actually smarter in this case to bring the 3y over here, and I'll show you why in a minute. But if I bring the 3y over here, you may be thinking, well, but that's not really doing what I need because I want the y by itself. Yes, but by bringing the 3y over here, now I can subtract the 12 and I never have to distribute a negative. Okay? So I end up with 3x minus 12 equals 3y. If you do it the other way, you end up with a negative 3y, and you have to divide everything by a negative, which I don't like doing because there's a lot of mistakes that happen. Divide everything by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1x. Negative 12 divided by 3 is minus 4 equals y. So there we have it. 1x minus 4, so what's my slope? This is where you should pause and try graphing it yourself. Slope is 1, which means up 1, right 1. Or down 1, left 1. Yeah? And my y-intercept in this case is negative 4, which means 0, negative 4. Okay? So try that yourself. Graph it yourself, see if you were right. You start at negative 4. And like I said, I'm not going to go down 1, right 1, because that's just going to make it's going to take me forever to graph it. So I'm going to go down 1, right, up 1, right 1 is the same as up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here. Or down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 5. I lost it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Really hard to see in a video monitor, but there's that other point. Graph it. And it looks something like that. Pretty simple, right? All right, next problem. Most of you are probably going to start this problem off by bringing the 15x over, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're smart, you would first look at these numbers and say, what is there a number I could divide them all by? Well, obviously you could divide everything by a 5. So I'm going to start off by doing that in this case. You could just start off by doing it normal, but this is actually kind of nice because it makes it easier. 15x divided by 5 is 3x. Now the beauty of that is this becomes 1y or just y. And this becomes 6. Then all I have to do is subtract 3x from both sides. Real simple that way, right? That only works if everything has the same common denominator. So I end up with y equals negative 3x plus 6. All right, my slope is going to be what? This is where you should pause and try it yourself. The slope is going to be negative 3, which means negative 3 over 1, which is down 3, right 1, up 3, left 1. Y-intercept is 0, 6. And there you have it. Let's graph it, see what's going on. Start at 6. Go down 3, right 1. I'm going to go down 6, right 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right 2, right 2. That's enough for me. Down 6, right 2 is right there. Graph that. Well, I messed up on my graph a little bit, but you get the idea. It should look something very similar to that. Okay. Next one. This one's interesting because this is when you realize that graphing using the x and the y-intercept and the slope is sometimes not the best way to do things. And here's a good example. When I bring the 2x, actually, since this is negative, I'm actually going to bring the y over. You could bring the x over if you wanted, but you'd have to divide by a -1. But I end up with 2x equaling 16 plus y. And then I'm going to add a -16 both sides. And I'm left with 2x minus 16 equals y, which is y equals mx plus b. Right? So graph this. Sorry, not graph this. Write what everything is. The slope is 2 over 1, which is up to right 1 or down to left 1, correct? And the y-intercept is -16. 0, -16. Now this is where you have a problem, because since this is -16, it's off my graph. So what am I going to do? Well, I could start by going by 2's. I could change this graph and make everything go by 2's. Or I could graph it another way. In this case, you could change this graph and go by 2's, then you'd only have to go to the 8's, because that would be 16. But I'm going to, in this case, I would probably graph this using the x and y intercepts. Okay? You could graph it using this information, but I'm going to use the x and y intercept. So remember how to do the graph using the x and y intercept. Cover up the y. 2x equals 16. So x is 8. So x is 8. If you're not sure what I'm doing, go back to the x and y intercept lesson. And then cover up the x number, -y equals 16, so y is -16. Well, that's not going to help me either, is it? Because it's off the graph, right? So probably the only way that I'm going to be able to do this then is to graph it by 2's. So every time you see a 1, just double everything, right? So this would be -2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And on your notes, you need to change your graph to say that. But there's -16. And now I want to go up to right 1, correct? Up to right 1, which would really be up 1 over, up 2 over 1 is actually right there. So I'm going to change this up. Let's make it easier. Let's do 2 over 1 is the same as, let's say, 8 over 4. That actually is probably good. I'm going to use 8 over 4. So I'm going to go up 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4. 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4. There we go. And like I said, change your x and y axis to say those numbers instead of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change it to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. All right? All right. We've got enough information to graph it. Oops. And there's a basic graph of that. Okay? A little bit harder. If you're probably in my class, we're probably going to change that 16 to an 8 in class, but that's how you would do it if it was a 16. All right? Next example, example 7. And this one I gave it to you not because it's hard, but because it's different. All right, remember that we want it to look like y equals mx plus b. So what's missing here? Well, there's nothing here. There's no plus number. So if I was to put a number here, what would it have to be? Well, hopefully by now it's pretty obvious it has to be 0, right? This goes through origin. So my slope is -5 over 1, which is down 5, right 1, up 5, left 1. And my y-intercept is actually origin, right? Is 0, 0. All right? So graph that. Up 5 over 1, up 5 over 1, down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1. There we have it. Graph that line. And there you got it. All right. Next one's another one very similar to that. In this case, remember, what do we want things to look like? Y equals mx plus b. So what's missing here? Well, that must be the number, so that must be b. So what's missing? Well, the x number is missing. So what the heck does it have to be if that's the case? What number can I put in for m to make it go away? Well, the answer is 0. So this must be 0x plus b. All right? Which makes the slope 0 over 1, which is up 0, right 1, or down 0, left 1. Yeah? And my y-intercept has to be, sorry, that's 0x plus 5, isn't it? So change that to a 5. So my y-intercept has to be 0, comma 5. Got it? Okay. So let's graph that information. Go up 5. And what am I going to do? Go up none, right 1. Up none, right 1 is right there. Or up none, right 5. So basically, dots on the line, yeah? Any dots on that line, so go ahead and graph that. It's a horizontal line. If you go back to that first lesson in this chapter about linear equations, you know that y equals numbers is horizontal lines, right? All right. Got one more example to do. And we have a word problem here. We may or may not do this in the class, but I'm going to go ahead and do it in the video so that you'll have it. All right. Plumber charges $65 service fee and $50 per hour. Write an equation for how much he charges you per hour, right? So let's try that. Well, if we think about this, how much it costs, we'll call it C, is equal to, what does he charge us? He charges $50 per hour, so $50 per hour plus, and I hope you know what a service fee is, but it's a one-time fee. How many times are they charging you the $65? Well, only one time. They're charging you $50 for every hour, but they're only charging you the $65 once. So hopefully when you see this problem, you can start seeing what's going on here. This must be the slope, and that must be the y-intercept. For example, if they came out to your house and didn't do any work at all, just looked at it for a couple minutes, they would still charge you the $65 even if they did no hours of work. Right? So this is the y-intercept, and that must be the slope. And here's a little trick. When you see the word per, that's almost always the slope. That word per means slope almost always. $50 for 1 hour. And in fact, that's what our slope is. Our slope is 50 over 1. And our y-intercept is what? 0.65. All right? All right, so let's go ahead and graph this. Now, I'm going to call these tens, okay? So that's 10, 20, 30, 40. So you need to change it on yours. That would be 100, right? And let's graph it. We start at 0.65, so 65 is here. And we go, what? Up 50. So we go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Sorry. 65, 75, 85, 95, 105 is here, over 1, which is about right there, yeah? So what does this look like? Well, it's going to be a vertical line like this. It's really hard to see. Let's go down a little bit too so you can see it. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 over 1. It's about like that, right? And your graph is going to look something like this. Pretty darn close to that, all right? So there's the graph of that. And the other part of this is, what's the cost for 2.5 hours of work? Now, you've got two ways you can do this. You could actually go over to 2.5 hours, which is somewhere around here. That'd be 10 hours, right? 10 hours, 20 hours, 30, 40, 50. So this 2.5 would be somewhere right around here. You could just look up there. Or the other way is, since you have an equation now, you could actually just put it in. So the cost must equal 50 times 2.5 plus 65, right? Well, 50 times 25, let's see, that's 625 doubled is 1250. So that's 125 plus 65. And 65 plus 125 is 0, carry 1, 8, 9, 190. The cost would have to be $190. What does that mean? If the plumber comes out for 2.5 hours, they're going to charge you $190. And there you have it, graphing using y equals mx plus b. These first couple examples are the key to this whole thing. I don't really care if you understood that word problem too well, but I do care that for now on, when you see an equation, you should be able to say, there's the slope and there's the y-intercept. All right? Good luck with this lesson.